Welcome back to PPT. In this video, we are going to focus on 3NF. We have finished 1NF and 2NF. Here, we are going to focus on 3NF. Let's dive right in. So 3NF. In 3NF, we are going to focus, first of all, in the characteristics of a relation that has 3NF. Okay, so characteristic. What is the characteristic of a 3NF? Well, any relation in 3NF can't have transitive dependency. Please check the video on basic Armstrong's axioms. Okay, basic 3 Armstrong's axioms to understand what transitive dependency is. But I'll keep it simple here. Let's say we have a set of attributes X, and let's say that's the primary key. Okay, it's the primary key. And that set of attributes functionally determines Y, and Y is actually non-prime attribute set. Non-prime attribute set. Well, what is a non-prime attribute set? Any attribute that does not belong to a candidate key. Okay, a candidate key or a set of candidate key attributes. Okay, so let's say there is a functional dependency. X functionally determines Y, where X is primary key, a set of primary key attribute. It can be a single attribute or it can be a group of attribute. It can be a composite key. And Y is non-prime attribute. Okay, non-prime attribute means it can be a set of non-prime attributes. But what does this mean? It is not part of any candidate key. And let's say there is another functional dependency where Y functionally determines Z. Okay, Z is also non-prime attribute. Z is also non-prime attribute. Well, then we can say there exists a transitive dependency. Why? X functionally determines Y, Y functionally determines Z, X functionally determines Z. Okay, so this is the story behind transitive dependency. And in 3NF, they can't have this transitive dependency. That's the important part. Okay, shall we look at an example? Let's say there is a relation stud course. Okay, let's say there is a relation stud course where we have the student ID, okay, the student ID and course ID, as well as let's say we have the grade, okay, score, and let's say we have grade. Well, here you can see they are telling us that stud ID and course ID are primary key, or you can even derive with that because we know score functionally dependent on stud ID and course ID. Okay, we can have course ID 1, student ID 1, course ID 1, and score will be determined based on that. That student scored 74 marks in that specific course. So he can do another course and in that he can score more than 74, less than 74. And another person who is another student, he can do the first course and get some sort of marks. Okay. And this one we know. And what if, okay, and what if we had a grade attribute? What if we had a grade attribute in this specific area, grade attribute? We know stud ID and course ID functionally determines score. Okay, this is the first functional dependency. We also know that score functionally determines grade. This is the second functional dependency. You can write this down in basic notation as stud ID, comma, course ID functionally determines score. And you can say score functionally determines grade. Well, this is what we call a transitive dependency. Why is it transitive? Well, we know this is the primary key attribute set. Okay, this is the primary key attribute set. Primary key set or primary attribute set. That's your wish. And score is a non-prime attribute. It's a non-prime attribute. And that non-prime attribute functionally determines another non-prime attribute. This non-prime attribute functionally determines another non-prime attribute. And this cannot be there in a relation that is in 3NF. That's why we say all non-prime attributes in a relation, all non-prime attributes in a relation should be fully functionally dependent. Should be fully functionally dependent. Because why do we say fully functionally dependent? If a relation is in, say, 2NF only, we can go for the 3NF conditions. Okay. So should be fully functionally dependent directly on prime key attribute. On prime key. Or we can say primary key. Not through another non-prime attribute. Not through another non-prime attribute. Keep this in mind. This is very important. Keep this in mind. All right. This is the characteristic of a 3NF relation. Here you have to keep in mind that y has to be, okay, y has to be a non-prime attribute. Y has to be a non-prime attribute. Well, why is that? If y is a candidate attribute, we don't consider it a transitive dependency. Let's say we have employee table. Let's say we have employee table. In that they have emp ID, and that will be the primary key, obviously. And what if they also had their NIC number? What if they had their NIC number? We know NIC number could have been the primary key. Why? It is a candidate attribute. It is a candidate attribute. Well, it is a candidate attribute. And we can say name of an employee can be functionally determined by NIC. Name of of an employee can be determined uh, by NIC, because we can say NIC functionally determines name. Okay, and we know emp ID functionally determines NIC. We can say that. So, is this a transitive dependency? Well, no, this is not a transitive dependency. Why? NIC could have been the primary key. Okay, it is a candidate attribute. So, this is not a transitive dependency. Keep this in mind. Okay, so what is a transitive dependency in a relation? Let's say x functionally determines y, and x is the primary key. X is the primary key, and y is a non-prime attribute. Y is a non-prime attribute. It can be a set of non-prime attribute also. Okay, it doesn't matter. And y functionally determines another non-prime attribute set. When this happens only, we say there is transitive dependency. Transitive dependency. Keep that in mind. This one is not a transitive dependency. Okay, so what is the practical rule? What is the practical rule? Well, we have to eliminate non-prime attributes that do not functionally depend on primary key. We have to eliminate non-prime attributes that do not functionally depend on depend directly on, yeah, directly is the keyword here, directly on primary key. This is the practical rule we are going to apply. Okay, so we can do this. Okay, first of all, we have to identify these attributes. We have to identify these attributes, identify these non-prime attributes, and then we will create a new relation and put them inside. Okay, and we will move those attributes to distinct, move those attributes to a distinct table, distinct table, where their dependencies can be properly represented. So when you move these attributes to a distinct table, in that relation, the primary key will be that non-primary key that we eliminated. Okay. So what is the formal definition? We have to look at that too. What is the formal definition? Well, the formal definition is the relation should be in 2NF. Relation should be in 2NF. Okay, 2NF. Well, if you have any doubts in 2NF, please watch the video on 2NF. And the second one, the relation shouldn't have transitive dependency. The relation shouldn't have transitive dependencies. That's all. So let's solve the question that we had in our hands. So we had stood, course. Here the problem was score was determining the grade. Layer. We had stood ID. We had course ID. And well, this one was score. And we had grade. The problem was these two functionally determine this, but this functionally determine this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this into two relations. I identified the non-prime attributes. These are the problems. So I'll eliminate this one into a new relation with this one so that it doesn't matter. So stood course, I'll have stood ID, course ID, and score. Stood ID, course ID, and score. Okay, so here one dependency is only there, and that is perfect. There are no transitive dependencies. Well, we'll come from 1NF, shall we? 1NF, there are no multivariate attributes. Good. 2NF, there is no partial dependency. 3NF, there is no transitive dependency. Perfect. Now I'll have score grade relation. Score grade relation. Well, in score grade relation, I'm going to put score and grade. And since I know for a specific score, there can only be a specific grade. Okay. If the score is 1, I can say the grade is F. So that's not an issue. So like this, we can break the relation. Okay. We can decompose. So here the FD is preserved. Here the FD is preserved. And there will be lossless condition also satisfied if you join these tables. And whether this is in 1NF, yes, because no duplicate values, no multivariate attributes, and there is no partial dependency. Why I can assure that? Because it's a single primary key. It's a simple primary key. Okay, it's not composite, so it's easy. And 3NF, yeah, it also works. Why? The non-prime attribute functionally dependent on primary key. Functionally dependent on primary key. And this is how you do 3NF. Okay, this is how you do 3NF. Alright. Thanks for watching the 17th video in our normalization series. If you found this breakdown of third normalization form helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more database tutorials. Hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest videos. Check out the full playlist to master all normal forms. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, keep learning and stay curious. Bye bye.